Mia Carter sat cross-legged on the dusty wooden floor of her grandmother's attic, surrounded by boxes and old belongings she hadn't seen in years. Her knees ached from kneeling for so long, and her hands were smudged with dirt and grime. But none of that mattered. This was the first time she'd been able to come here since her grandmother passed away 6 months ago. Cleaning out the attic wasn't something she wanted to do. It was something she had to do. Rent was due next week, and if she didn't find anything valuable among these relics, she might not be able to pay it. The attic smelled like old wood and mothballs, a scent that brought back memories of her childhood summers spent at her grandmother's house. Back then, this place had seemed magical, full of hidden treasures waiting to be discovered. Now, as an adult struggling to make ends meet, Mia knew better. Most of what she found would probably end up in a yard sale or donated to charity. Still, there was always a tiny spark of hope inside her, a voice whispering that maybe, just maybe, she'd stumble upon something worth keeping. She reached for another box tucked away under a pile of yellowed newspapers and heavy hardcover books. It was smaller than the others, made of dark wood with ornate carvings along its edges. The lid creaked as she opened it, revealing a velvet lining worn thin with age. Inside lay a single item, a ruby ring. Mia picked it up carefully, holding it between her thumb and forefinger. The stone was large and deep red, almost glowing even in the dim light filtering through the attic's cracked window. Tiny engravings spiraled around the band, too delicate to read without squinting. Despite its beauty, the ring looked ancient, like something that belonged in a museum, rather than a dusty old box. For a moment, Mia forgot about her financial troubles and simply stared at it, mesmerized. Without thinking, she slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as though it had been made for her. A strange warmth spread through her hand, traveling up her arm and into her chest. Startled, Mia pulled her hand back, examining the ring again. Was it her imagination, or did it seem brighter now? She shook her head, dismissing the thought. Attics could play tricks on your mind, especially when you were tired and stressed. After packing the rest of the items into bags, Mia headed downstairs with the ring still on her finger. She set the bags near the door and collapsed onto the couch in the living room. Her apartment was small, just one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a cramped bathroom, but it was all she could afford. The walls were bare except for a few water stains, and the furniture consisted of mismatched pieces scavenged from thrift stores. She sighed, running a hand through her messy brown hair. Life hadn't turned out the way she'd hoped, but she tried not to dwell on it too much. Dwelling didn't pay the bills. Later that evening, as Mia prepared dinner, someone knocked on her door. Frowning, she wiped her hands on a towel and went to answer it. Standing outside was a delivery man holding a thick envelope. "Are you Mia Carter?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, confused. "What's this?" "It's for you," he said, handing over the envelope before turning to leave. Mia closed the door and examined the package. Her name and address were typed neatly on the front, but there was no return address. Curious, she tore it open and pulled out a stack of official-looking documents. At the top of the first page, bold letters declared, "Legal recognition of sibling status." Below that, it stated that Mia Carter was hereby recognized as the biological sister of Ethan Hartley, a name she didn't recognize. Flipping through the pages, she saw birth certificates, adoption records, and legal affidavits, all signed and stamped. Her heart raced as she read further. According to the documents, her mother had remarried after leaving Mia's father and had given birth to another child, Ethan. They had lived separately ever since, which explained why Mia had never known about him. What shocked her most, however, was the mention of Ethan's current status. He wasn't just some random sibling. He was Ethan Hartley, the billionaire entrepreneur whose face frequently appeared in magazines and news articles. The same Ethan Hartley who owned a tech empire worth billions of dollars. Mia sank onto the couch, clutching the papers tightly. How could this be real? She had grown up poor, moving from one cramped apartment to another, while her supposed brother lived in luxury. And why had no one told her about him until now? None of it made sense. As she sat there trying to process everything, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a text message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Before she could respond, another message followed. "This is Ethan Hartley." Mia stared at the screen, her mind spinning. Was this some kind of prank? Or was the ruby ring somehow connected to all of this? Whatever the truth was, one thing was certain. Her life was about to change forever. That night, Mia barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes of the ruby ring glowing brighter and brighter, filling the darkness with its warm red light. She couldn't shake the feeling that it held secrets far beyond anything she could imagine. By morning, she had decided to meet Ethan, not because she trusted him, but because she needed answers. Little did she know, those answers would lead her down a path more extraordinary than any fairy tale she'd ever dreamed of. Mia stood at the entrance of her apartment building, staring at the black car parked by the curb. She recognized it immediately, a luxury vehicle that looked like it belonged in a magazine rather than on her street. Her heart pounded as she saw the man standing next to it. He was tall and impeccably dressed in a navy blue suit that screamed wealth and power. His dark hair was neatly styled, and his sharp features gave him an air of confidence. This had to be Ethan Hartley. She hesitated for a moment, gripping the stack of documents tightly in her hands. Was this really happening? Just yesterday, she'd been struggling to figure out how to pay rent, and now here she was, face to face, with a billionaire who claimed to be her brother. Taking a deep breath, Mia forced herself to walk toward him. "Mia?" Ethan asked, his voice smooth and polite. He offered her a warm smile, though there was something guarded about his eyes. "Yes," she replied, stopping a few feet away from him. "You're Ethan?" He nodded. "It's good to finally meet you." He extended his hand, and after a brief pause, Mia shook it. His grip was firm, professional. "I know this must all feel overwhelming. I wanted to come in person to explain everything." Mia crossed her arms, feeling uneasy. "Explain what exactly? These papers say we're siblings, but I don't even know you. How is any of this possible?" Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated. Our parents separated when we were very young. My father remarried, and I grew up not knowing much about your side of the family. Recently, some old records came to light, and I hired investigators to look into them. That's how I found out about you." Mia frowned. "And why now? Why didn't anyone tell me sooner?" "I wish I had answers," Ethan said, his tone sincere. "But honestly, I only learned about you a few weeks ago. When I did, I knew I had to reach out. You're my sister, Mia. No matter what happened in the past, that doesn't change." His words sounded genuine, but Mia couldn't shake her doubts. Growing up, she'd never heard a single mention of Ethan or his family. Why would her mother keep something like this from her? And why did it feel like there was more to the story than he was letting on? Before she could ask another question, Ethan gestured toward the car. "Would you mind coming with me? There's so much I want to share, and it's hard to do that, standing here." Mia glanced at the car, then back at Ethan. She didn't trust him completely, not yet, but curiosity got the better of her. "Fine," she said, "but I'm not making any promises." Ethan smiled again, opening the passenger door for her. As Mia slid into the plush leather seat, she couldn't help but marvel at the difference between this world and hers. The inside of the car smelled faintly of leather and expensive cologne, and every detail seemed designed for comfort and luxury. It was nothing like the beat-up sedan she occasionally borrowed from a friend. The drive took them across the city to a towering skyscraper overlooking Lake Michigan. Ethan led her inside, where they stepped into a private elevator that whisked them up to the top floor. When the doors opened, Mia gasped. They entered a sprawling penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of the lake and skyline. Modern furniture filled the space and artwork adorned the walls. Everything gleamed with perfection. "This is where you live?" Mia asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "It's one of my places," Ethan replied casually. "Come, let's sit down." They settled onto a sleek white couch, and Ethan poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal pitcher. Handing one to Mia, He began explaining more about their shared history. According to him, their father had left their mother shortly after Mia was born, taking Ethan with him. Their mother remarried and started a new life, while Ethan's father built a successful business empire. Over time, communication between the two sides of the family dwindled until it stopped altogether. "But why are you telling me this now?" Mia pressed. "Why does it matter after all these years?" Ethan leaned forward, his expression serious. "Because I believe our connection goes deeper than just blood. Think about it. How many coincidences have brought us together? The ring, the documents, everything pointing to you being part of my life. Don't you think that means something?" Mia's stomach tightened. So he knew about the ruby ring. She hadn't mentioned it during their conversation earlier, which meant he must have figured it out somehow. But how? "What do you know about the ring?" she asked carefully. Ethan hesitated, choosing his words with care. "That ring has been in our family for generations. It's said to hold special significance, something beyond ordinary value. I can't explain it fully, but I believe it played a role in bringing us back together." His explanation felt vague, almost evasive. Mia studied his face, searching for signs of dishonesty, but he appeared genuinely convinced of what he was saying. Still, she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that he wasn't telling her the whole truth. Over the next hour, Ethan showed her photos of their parents, childhood pictures of himself, and documents proving their familial ties. Each piece of evidence added weight to his claims, making it harder for Mia to dismiss the idea that they were indeed related. Yet, the unanswered questions lingered in her mind. Why had no one told her about Ethan before? What secrets lay hidden behind those perfectly crafted explanations? As the afternoon wore on, Ethan invited her to stay for dinner. A chef arrived to prepare a gourmet meal, and Mia found herself enjoying the food despite her lingering unease. Throughout the evening, Ethan continued to charm her, sharing stories about his life and asking about hers. He spoke passionately about his work, his philanthropy, and his dreams for the future. Slowly but surely, Mia began to see glimpses of sincerity beneath his polished exterior. By the end of the night, Mia realized she had two choices: walk away and return to her old life, or take a leap of faith and embrace this unexpected opportunity. Staying meant stepping into a world she barely understood, one filled with privilege and responsibility. Leaving meant going back to the struggles she'd faced for years, with no guarantee things would ever improve. As she climbed into bed later that night, back in her own apartment, Mia stared at the ruby ring still resting on her finger. Its glow seemed softer now, almost comforting. For the first time since meeting Ethan, she allowed herself to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Mia couldn't stop thinking about the ruby ring. It seemed to follow her everywhere, even when it wasn't on her finger. During the day, she caught herself glancing at it constantly, wondering why it felt so alive, so powerful. At night, she dreamed of its glow, bright and pulsing as if it were trying to tell her something. She tried to convince herself that it was just her imagination, but deep down, she knew there was more to it. One evening, after Ethan had gone out for a business meeting, Mia decided to explore his penthouse further. She hadn't seen much of it beyond the living room and her bedroom, and curiosity got the better of her. As she wandered through the halls, she noticed a door slightly ajar at the end of a corridor. Peering inside, she realized it was Ethan's private study, a room he'd warned her not to enter. Her heart raced as she stepped inside. The room was lined with shelves filled with books, some old and dusty, others new and polished. A large oak desk sat in the center, covered with papers, pens, and a laptop. But what caught her attention was a locked drawer in the desk. Something inside her told her to look closer. After searching the room for a key, she found one hidden under a stack of books on a nearby shelf. Her hands trembled as she unlocked the drawer and opened it. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its cover worn and cracked from years of use. Hesitantly, she flipped it open and began reading. The first few pages were filled with notes about ancient artifacts, maps, drawings, and descriptions of objects said to possess magical powers. But as she turned the pages, she found entries, specifically about the ruby ring. According to the journal, the ring had been passed down through their family for generations, each owner claiming it had mysterious abilities. Some said it could bend people's wills, while others believed it could alter reality itself. Mia's stomach churned as she read further. One entry described an experiment Ethan had conducted using the ring. He claimed to have tested its power by giving commands to unsuspecting strangers who obeyed without question. Another entry detailed his plans to use the ring to expand his influence both in business and politics. The final page contained a warning. The ring's power comes at a cost. Those who wield it risk losing themselves entirely. Her hands shook as she closed the journal. So Ethan had known all along. He hadn't brought her here out of kindness or a desire to reconnect. He'd used her to activate the ring's power. Everything he'd done, every word he'd said had been part of a calculated plan. Anger bubbled inside her, but it was mixed with fear. If the ring was as dangerous as the journal suggested, then wearing it made her vulnerable, not just to others, but to herself. What if it changed her in ways she couldn't control? What if it turned her into someone she didn't recognize? Before she could think too much about it, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Panicking, she shoved the journal back into the drawer and locked it, slipping the key into her pocket just as Ethan walked in. "Mia?" he asked, his tone calm but curious. "What are you doing in here?" She froze, her mind racing for an excuse. I got lost," she stammered. "I didn't mean to intrude." Ethan studied her for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. Then he smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "It's fine. Just be careful in here. Some of these books are quite valuable." "I'll remember that," she said, forcing a smile as she brushed past him and hurried back to her room. Once she was alone, Mia collapsed onto her bed, clutching the key tightly in her hand. She didn't know what to do next. Confronting Ethan would only make things worse. He was too smart, too manipulative. But ignoring the truth wasn't an option either. She needed help, someone she could trust. The next morning, Mia decided to reach out to Lucas Bennett, Ethan's childhood friend. From what she'd observed, Lucas seemed loyal but also cautious, often questioning Ethan's decisions in subtle ways. Maybe he'd be willing to listen. She called him later that day, keeping her tone casual. "Hi, Lucas, it's Mia. Do you have a minute to talk?" "Sure," he replied, sounding surprised. "Is everything okay?" "Not really," she admitted. "Can we meet somewhere? Somewhere private?" They agreed to meet at a quiet cafe downtown. When Mia arrived, Lucas was already seated at a corner table, sipping a cup of coffee. He looked up as she approached, his expression concerned. "What's going on?" he asked as she sat down. Mia hesitated, unsure where to start. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, "It's about Ethan and the ruby ring." Lucas's eyes widened. "What about them?" "He's using me," she blurted out. "He knew the ring had powers all along. He brought me here because he thought I could activate it, and now he's planning to use it for I don't even know what." Lucas frowned, leaning back in his chair. "That's a serious accusation. Are you sure about this?" "I read his journal," Mia said. "It's all there, the experiments, the plans, the warnings. He's been lying to me from the beginning." Lucas was silent for a moment, clearly processing what she'd said. "If that's true, then we're in deeper trouble than I realized." "What do you mean?" Mia asked. "Ethan's always been ambitious," Lucas explained, "but lately he's been taking bigger risks, crossing lines I never thought he'd cross. If he thinks the ring can give him unlimited power, there's no telling what he'll do." Mia nodded, relief washing over her. At least someone believed her. "I need your help. I can't stop him alone." Lucas sighed, rubbing his temples. "You're asking me to go against my best friend. That's not an easy thing to do." "I know," Mia said softly. "But if you don't, who will?" After a long pause, Lucas finally nodded. "Okay, I'll help you. But we need to be careful. Ethan's not someone you want to cross. Over. The next few days, Mia and Lucas worked together to gather evidence of Ethan's unethical practices. They searched his files, listened to his phone calls, and pieced together a timeline of his actions. What they found was shocking. Bribes, illegal deals, and experiments involving other ancient artifacts. It was clear that Ethan would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. As the pieces fell into place, Mia began to feel a sense of determination she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, she was fighting for everyone who might suffer if Ethan succeeded. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but it also gave her strength. One night, as she stared at the ruby ring glowing faintly on her finger, Mia made a decision. She wouldn't let fear control her. Whatever happened next, she would face it head-on, with courage, honesty, and a refusal to compromise her values. And somewhere, buried deep within the pages of Ethan's journal, lay a single sentence that gave her hope. True power lies not in domination but in the choices we make. Mia smiled faintly, feeling a spark of resolve ignite within her. No matter how dangerous the road ahead might be, she knew one thing for certain. She wouldn't let the ruby ring or Ethan dictate her future. Mia couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Since moving into Ethan's penthouse, she'd noticed subtle changes, not just in her surroundings, but in herself. People treated her differently now, almost as if they were afraid of her. Strangers approached her on the street offering favors or gifts without explanation. Even waiters at restaurants went out of their way to ensure she was satisfied. At first, Mia thought it was because of her association with Ethan, but deep down, she knew there was more to it. The ruby ring seemed to pulse faintly whenever she wore it, its glow growing stronger when she entered crowded places. It wasn't obvious enough for others to notice, but Mia could feel it, a warm hum that traveled up her arm and settled in her chest. She began to suspect that the ring was influencing those around her, bending their wills to align with hers. The realization made her uneasy. Was this why Ethan had been so eager to bring her into his world? Did he know what the ring could do? One evening, after another day of strange occurrences, Mia decided to confront Ethan. She waited until late, at night when the penthouse was quiet, then slipped into his home office. The door was slightly ajar and she peeked inside to see him hunched over his desk, typing furiously on his laptop. Papers were scattered across the surface, along with photos of ancient artifacts and handwritten notes. Something about the scene felt wrong, too secretive, too calculated. Taking a deep breath, Mia stepped into the room. "Ethan," she said firmly, "we need to talk." He looked up, startled, then quickly closed his laptop. "Mia, what are you doing here?" "I think you owe me some answers," she replied, holding up her hand to show him the ring. "This thing, it's not normal. I can feel it affecting people, and I'm starting to wonder if you knew about it all along." Ethan sighed, leaning back in his chair. For a moment he looked tired, older than his years. "You're right," he admitted finally. "I did know." Mia's heart sank. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wasn't sure how you'd react," he said. "Look, Mia, the ring has been in our family for generations. Legend says it holds incredible power to influence minds, shape reality, even alter fate itself. But no one ever proved it worked until you put it on." She stared at him, disbelief warring with anger. "So you used me? You brought me here because you thought I could activate the ring?" "No!" Ethan protested, standing up. "That's not why I reached out to you. I wanted to reconnect with my family, to make things right. But once I saw what the ring could do through you, I realized we could use it to achieve so much more. To change the world." "Change the world?" Mia repeated, incredulous. "Or control it?" Ethan hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor. "Maybe both. Think about it, Mia. With this kind of power, we could end poverty, stop wars, create a better future for everyone. Isn't that worth it?" "It's not that simple," Mia shot back. "People aren't meant to have that kind of control over others. What happens when someone uses it for selfish reasons? What happens when it corrupts them? Ethan shook his head. We'll be careful. We'll set boundaries. Together, we can make sure it's used responsibly. But Mia wasn't convinced. She thought about the way strangers had fawned over her, the way doors had opened effortlessly wherever she went. The ring's influence was intoxicating, yes, but also dangerous. She didn't want to become someone who manipulated others. No matter how noble the cause might seem. I don't trust it, she said quietly, and I don't trust you anymore. Ethan's expression hardened. You don't understand what you're throwing away. This is your chance to be part of something bigger than yourself. And maybe I don't want to be, Mia countered. Maybe I just want to live my life without playing games with other people's freedom. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy, charged with unspoken emotions. Finally, Ethan broke it. If you walk away from this, you'll regret it. You'll go back to being invisible, struggling to survive while the world moves on without you. Mia clenched her fists, fighting back tears. At least I'll still be me. With that, she turned and left the office, leaving Ethan staring after her. Back in her room, she removed the ruby ring and placed it in a small wooden box she'd found in the attic. Its glow dimmed instantly, as though sensing her rejection. For the first time in weeks, Mia felt a sense of relief. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She wouldn't let the ring, or Ethan, control her destiny. Over the next few days, Mia kept her distance from Ethan, avoiding conversations and spending most of her time exploring the city alone. She visited museums, parks, and cafes, trying to remind herself of the simple joys she'd taken for granted before all this madness began. Slowly, she started to piece together a plan. If Ethan truly believed the ring could change the world, then he would stop at nothing to get it back. She needed allies, people who could help her protect it and expose the truth about its power. Her search led her to Lucas Bennett, Ethan's childhood friend and business partner. Though initially wary of Mia, Lucas agreed to meet her at a quiet coffee shop downtown. Over steaming cups of espresso, she told him everything: the ring, Ethan's obsession, and her fears about what might happen if the artifact fell into the wrong hands. Lucas listened intently, his expression growing darker with each word. When Mia finished, he leaned forward, lowering his voice. Ethan's always been ambitious, but lately, he's crossed lines I never thought he'd cross. If what you're saying is true, then we need to act fast. Together, they devised a plan. Using her knowledge of Ethan's operations, Mia would gather evidence of his unethical practices and leak it to the press. Meanwhile, Lucas would plant seeds of doubt among Ethan's inner circle, weakening his hold on the company. It was risky, but Mia knew it was the only way to stop him. As she prepared to execute the plan, Mia couldn't help but reflect on how far she'd come. Just weeks ago, she'd been a struggling waitress with no hope for the future. Now she was standing up to one of the most powerful men in the country, determined to do what was right, even if it cost her everything. The battle ahead wouldn't be easy, but Mia was ready. Whatever happened next, she vowed to stay true to herself, and to fight for a world where power like the ruby rings couldn't fall into the wrong hands. Mia's heart raced as she entered the boardroom of Hartley Tech late one evening. The building was eerily quiet, most employees having gone home hours ago. Only Ethan, Lucas, and a few trusted executives remained. This was it, the moment she'd been preparing for. Everything hinged on what happened next. Ethan stood at the head of the table, his tall frame radiating authority. He glanced up sharply as Mia walked in, his eyes narrowing when he saw the folder clutched in her hands. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice cold. "This," Mia said firmly, placing the folder on the table, "is proof of everything you've done." She opened the folder and began laying out the documents inside. Photos of ancient artifacts tied to dubious expeditions funded by Ethan's company. Emails detailing bribes paid to government officials. Financial records showing money funneled into offshore accounts. And, most damning of all, Notes from Ethan's private journal describing experiments involving mystical objects, including the ruby ring. Ethan stared at the papers, his jaw tightening. For a moment he looked like he might explode. Then surprisingly he laughed, a low, bitter sound that sent chills down Mia's spine. "You really think this changes anything?" he asked, shaking his head. "Do you honestly believe people will care about some old stories and rumors? I'm Ethan Hartley. My name means something. No one will take you seriously." "That's where you're wrong," Mia replied, her voice steady, despite the fear bubbling inside her. "These aren't just rumors, they're facts. Facts that reporters are already reviewing right now." Ethan froze, his confident demeanor cracking. "What did you do?" "I leaked everything," Mia said simply. "Every document, every email, every secret you tried so hard to bury. By tomorrow morning, the whole world will know who you really are." For a split second, Ethan looked genuinely shocked. But then his expression hardened, and he turned to Lucas, who had been standing quietly near the door. "Did you know about this?" he snapped. Lucas hesitated before nodding slowly. "I couldn't let you keep going down this path, Ethan. What you're doing, it's not right." "You betrayed me," Ethan growled, his voice trembling with anger. "After everything we've built together, you side with her?" "I didn't have a choice," Lucas said, meeting Ethan's gaze. "You left me no other option." The tension in the room was suffocating. Mia could feel the weight of Ethan's fury pressing down on her, but she refused to back down. She had come too far to give up now. "You don't get it, do you?" Ethan said, turning back to Mia. His tone was icy, almost venomous. "Even if they believe you, even if they tear me apart, you'll never escape this. You're part of it. Now, whether you like it or not, your name will be dragged through the mud right alongside mine." "Maybe," Mia admitted, standing her ground. "But at least I'll know I did the right thing. Can you say the same?" Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed the nearest stack of papers and hurled them across the room. "Fine," he shouted. "If that's how you want to play it, go ahead, ruin everything, see if I care." With that, he stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed through the empty halls, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Mia sank into a chair, exhaling deeply. It was over, or at least it felt like it. She had done what she set out to do, but as the adrenaline faded, doubt crept in. Had she made the right decision? Would exposing Ethan truly stop the misuse of the ruby ring's power? Or would someone else inevitably pick up where he left off? Lucas approached her cautiously, pulling up a chair beside her. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. "I don't know," Mia admitted. "I thought I was ready for this, but now, I'm not sure." "You did the right thing," Lucas assured her. "Ethan needed to be stopped. If anyone can handle the fallout, it's you." Mia managed a small smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks. That means a lot." They sat there for a while, neither speaking, both lost in their thoughts. Eventually, Lucas broke the silence. "What happens now? With the ring, I mean." Mia pulled the wooden box containing the ruby ring from her bag and placed it on the table. Its faint glow pulsed softly, almost as if it were alive. "I'm not sure," she said. "It's too dangerous to keep, but I don't know what to do with it either. Destroying it might be the safest option." Lucas frowned. "Do you think that's even possible? Something like this? It doesn't seem like it belongs in our world." "You're probably right," Mia said. "But keeping it hidden away feels like the best I can do for now. Maybe someday I'll figure out a better solution." As dawn broke over the city, Mia left the Hartley Tech building for the last time. The streets were quiet, bathed in the soft golden light of sunrise. She felt drained emotionally and physically, but also strangely free. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't weighed down by secrets or lies. When the news broke later that day, it spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed about Ethan Hartley's fall from grace, detailing his unethical practices and obsession with ancient artifacts. Public opinion turned against him almost instantly, and within days, his empire began to crumble. Reporters camped outside his penthouse, desperate for a statement, but Ethan remained silent, vanishing from public view entirely. Meanwhile, Mia retreated to a small apartment she rented under an alias. She wanted nothing more to do with the glitz and glamour of Ethan's world. Instead, she focused on rebuilding her life, using the skills she'd gained during her brief stint in high society to help others. She volunteered at local shelters, mentored struggling students, and worked tirelessly to make a difference in ways that didn't rely on wealth or power. Though she occasionally thought about the ruby ring, locked safely away in a safety deposit box, Mia resisted the urge to retrieve it. Its influence was too great, its potential for destruction too immense. Some things, she realized, were better left untouched. Months passed, and life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be after everything that had happened. One sunny afternoon, as Mia sorted donations at a community center, she noticed a familiar face among the volunteers. It was Daniel, a teacher she'd met months earlier at a food bank. He smiled warmly when he saw her, and they quickly struck up a conversation. Over time, their friendship blossomed into something deeper. Daniel shared Mia's passion for helping others, and together, they found joy in making a difference. No matter how small. For the first time in years, Mia felt truly content, not because of money or status, but because she finally understood what mattered most. And somewhere, buried deep beneath layers of forgotten memories, the ruby ring waited, silently, its secrets untold. Months had passed since Mia walked away from Ethan's world, and life had settled into a comforting rhythm. She no longer woke up worrying about rent or wondering if she'd made the right choices. Instead, she spent her days helping others, teaching, classes at a community center, volunteering at a local food bank, and mentoring young adults trying to find their footing in life. It wasn't glamorous work, but it gave her purpose, something money could never buy. Her new home was far removed. From the luxury of Ethan's penthouse, a modest cottage near Lake Michigan became her sanctuary, a place where she could breathe freely without the weight of secrets or expectations. The house wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms and a tiny kitchen, but it felt like hers in a way nothing else ever had. She painted the walls soft pastel colors, hung pictures of sunsets and flowers, and filled the shelves with books she'd always wanted to read but never had time for. One of the best parts of her new life was Daniel. They'd met months ago while volunteering together, and their connection had grown naturally over time. He was different from anyone Mia had known before, kind, patient, and grounded. Unlike Ethan, who thrived on power and ambition, Daniel valued simplicity and kindness. He taught high school history and often joked that his students kept him humble. To Mia, he represented everything good in the world, things she'd almost forgotten existed during her time with Ethan. On weekends, they explored the area around the lake, hiking trails and visiting farmers' markets. Sometimes they sat on the porch, sipping coffee or tea, talking about everything and nothing. Those moments were precious to Mia. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had to prove herself or live up to someone else's standards. With Daniel, she could simply be herself. But even in this peaceful existence, thoughts of the ruby ring occasionally crept into her mind. It remained locked away in a safety deposit box at a nearby bank, untouched and unseen. Every now and then, curiosity got the better of her, and she wondered what might happen if she took it out again. Would its power still affect people? Could it be used for good instead of harm? Each time these questions surfaced, Mia reminded herself why she'd hidden it in the first place. Power like that came at too great a cost. It twisted people, changed them in ways they couldn't control. Ethan's downfall was proof enough of that. She didn't want to risk becoming someone she didn't recognize, or worse, hurting others in the process. Still, there were nights when she dreamed of the ring. In her dreams, it glowed brighter than ever, casting a warm red light that seemed to envelop her. Sometimes she heard voices whispering promises of wealth, influence, and happiness. Other times, she saw glimpses of futures that could have been. Futures where she ruled boardrooms, commanded armies, or reshaped entire cities. But when she woke, the dreams faded, leaving only a lingering sense of unease. One crisp autumn morning, Mia decided to visit the safety deposit box. Not to retrieve the ring, but to reassure herself that it was still safe. She drove to the bank alone, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. As she signed in and followed the clerk to the vault, her heart pounded in her chest. What if someone had broken in? What if the ring had somehow escaped its confines? The clerk unlocked the heavy metal door, revealing rows of small boxes. Mia found hers and opened it carefully. Inside lay the wooden box containing the ring, exactly as she'd left it. She lifted the lid slowly, half expecting the ruby to pulse or glow, but it remained still, its deep red surface catching the dim light of the vault. Relief washed over her as she closed the box and returned it to its place. Whatever magic the ring held, it wasn't calling to her anymore. Maybe it never really had. Maybe the power had always been within her, waiting to be unleashed or restrained. Back home, Mia joined Daniel on the porch, wrapping herself in a blanket as the cool breeze rustled the leaves. "How was your trip?" he asked, handing her a mug of hot chocolate. "It was fine," she said, smiling faintly. "Just checking on something I needed to." He raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. That was one of the things Mia loved most about him. He knew when to give her space. "Well, you're back now," he said, nudging her shoulder playfully. "And I made chili for dinner. Think you can handle my cooking?" Mia laughed, the sound light and genuine. "I think I'll survive." As the afternoon turned into evening, they cooked together, sharing stories and laughter. Later, they sat by the fireplace, watching the flames dance across the logs. Daniel reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady. "You know," he said softly, "you don't talk much about your past. But whatever happened, I'm glad you're here now." Mia looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Me too," she whispered. "I wouldn't trade this for anything." In that moment, surrounded by warmth and love, Mia realized how far she'd come. Once she'd believed happiness depended on external factors, money, status, recognition. Now she understood that true fulfillment came from within, from living authentically and connecting deeply with others. Somewhere out there, Ethan Hartley remained a ghost of his former self, his empire dismantled and his name tarnished. Occasionally, Mia saw articles speculating about his whereabouts, but she paid little attention. His story was no longer hers to carry. Instead, she focused on building a future worth living, a future built on kindness, honesty, and compassion. And though the ruby ring waited silently in its vault, its mysteries untold, Mia knew she'd made the right choice. Some powers were meant to remain hidden, their allure outweighed by the risks they posed. As winter approached and snow began to dust the ground, Mia embraced the simplicity of her new life. She didn't need wealth or fame to feel fulfilled. All she needed was a cozy home, a loving partner, and the knowledge that she was doing her part to make the world a little brighter. One small act of kindness at a time.